I used to present this big finance report to all of the executive leaders across finance and departments, which was all men except for one woman. And we had a changing of the guard. A new head of finance came in. And the first time I presented to him, he said, I look like I should be dancing on the table instead of sitting at it.
Wow. Wow.
And you're like, I have
Yeah.
no idea what to say to that. So you just keep going. And I just kept presenting and I just moved forward and I just continued with what I was doing and acted like I didn't hear him. And, I will say that particular company, by the time I even made it back to my desk, the head of HR was sitting there like, okay, would you like to file a formal complaint? How would you like to handle this? Right. And they were really supportive, but it was one of those situations where it didn't matter that my technical acumen was strong. It didn't matter that I had the answers to the questions. It mattered that I was the youngest woman sitting in the room. And so I think it's unrealistic to expect that that's not happening. Welcome back to this episode of Secrets of the Career Game. So many people are trying to navigate a corporate world that is laden with secrets, cleverly hidden, and unspoken rules to a game that most employees don't even know that they're playing. On this podcast, we try to give you a peek behind the curtains and some tips and tricks to ultimately make you successful in your career and help you progress a little bit faster. I am so looking forward to today's episode. Today, we are joined by Tracy Nolan, and she's going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I think is going to resonate with you guys. She's had an incredible corporate experience herself. She is the youngest executive and only woman on a retail board early on in her career. She's led Fortune 100 companies like Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile. She's also a board member for Dress for Success Worldwide, a Harvard Business School Women in Boards graduate, and an NACD certified director. And today, she and I are going to be chatting about breaking the glass ceiling, which I think we have all agreed at this point exists, how to lead through crisis, and then how to balance strength and compassion without losing your authority. So Tracy, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. We're so excited to have you.
Kendall, thank you for having me. It's one of my favorite topics, definitely, because I've, been really passionate about it my whole career, but more so it's just great to be on your podcast to talk about it. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like there's so many synergies between what you experienced in your career, my career. I feel like there's so much overlap. So I'm excited to jump in. So for anybody who is listening today and maybe hasn't familiar with you before today's episode, why don't you give them a little more in-depth upload of your background, right? You led all these really big companies. Why don't you talk them a little bit through your experience?
Sure, Kendall. So it really goes way back. When I graduated from college, I thought I was going to go do this big job. And I ended up starting in retailing and just loving the fact that in retail, I got to manage people, help, customers, market, hire, fire, do all these things. And I really realized that I wasn't going to just be an accountant, or I wasn't going to just go, do some IT type role. And it kind of just spurred me into my career that I did so well in retail, that somebody was looking in telco about trying to make, this is way back in the day when, you'd have a cell phone and you didn't know where to buy it, or you'd see it under glass, but how did you make it consumer friendly? So ended up getting into retail, led me to Verizon, led 2 of their top regions in the entire country for them, led through crisis when it came to 9/11. And helping get Wall Street back up and going, and get phones to disaster recovery, to then, doing another startup that was really cool, which was the whole buyback trade-in program, where some days you used to, finish with your cell phone, stick it in a drawer and go get a new one. Well, the whole process of buying a cell phone and turning it in for dollars, that was actually invented by the company that I worked for a little while. And I went back in and got it, Verizon, up and going in that. And then I spent some time at Sprint. We were in desperate need of trying to turn the company around, and our interest payments were super high, recovering. Our revenue barely covered it on a monthly basis, and we had to turn the company around. And we were either going to buy another company or we were going to sell it. And we ended up selling to T-Mobile, and I spent a couple of years at T-Mobile. And another big crisis was when COVID hit in the middle of us merging, and I had 14,000 people reporting to me and all the stores across the country, and had to figure out how to keep the employees safe, help customers and still service customers while going through one of the largest mergers in telco history. And I did that for 2 years, and then I got this call to go into healthcare and health insurance, and I was like, wow, could I transform, take what I did in telco and move it into healthcare? And so that is what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And I'm just someone who enjoys change, believe it or not. I can't stand still. I always feel like you need to be moving forward. And part of what I love the most is helping others achieve what they can believe, what they don't think that they can achieve. So that's really all about me.
I love that. And it's so funny. So I started in telco early on in
Yeah.
my career. So I worked for T-Mobile, I worked for AT&T. It's where I met my husband, who is still in telco. But I laughed. I was like, there's so much overlap because I think it's a very fast-paced industry. It's very customer focused. It's a really unique space. So one of the things you talk about a lot is your philosophy that you're either moving forward or backward. You're never standing still. So I'd kind of love to jump into that. You've had a lot of change in your career. You said you love it. I love it too. I think that's a sign of a high performer. But what does that mean to you that you're always moving forward or backward, never really staying the same?
There was a time that I was working at Verizon, and I was told, hey, Trace, you're doing a good job. There's going to be changes coming around. Just keep your head down. Just do your job. And like, don't stand out too much. Don't not stand out, like just be steady. And I was like, well, that sounds boring to me. And like to me, the world is moving forward, and right now more than ever, technology is taking us faster and faster than we ever have been. And I just think that if you're feeling like you think you can just be comfortable in what you're doing today, what you're doing today is not going to get you where your company or you where you need to be in the future. So you got to put yourself out in those uncomfort zones and move forward, because you really never stand still. And if you just want to be okay doing what you're doing today and you think that's it, you're going to end up going backwards. So I always say, like, you've got to be forward thinking, not only in business, but in your personal career as you move forward, because life is changing, right? Nothing today, what you do today has got to be a little different than tomorrow.
Yeah. I 1000% agree with that, Tracy. And I think it's such an interesting concept because, I think with how the job market has changed recently, how corporate cultures have changed, I see this increase in people saying, well, I don't want to get promoted. I don't want to take on more responsibility. I just want to coast. And I don't think there's anything wrong with reaching a level in your career that you want to stay at. But where the problem comes is I want to stay and I don't want to get any better as a person. I want to
Exactly.
stay, but I don't want to do new things. I don't want to try new things. I don't want to invest in myself and my self development. And that's where I think people have this misconception of like, oh, I'm just going to get to the pick a level, manager level, and I'm going to stay there. I don't want to manage a big team. I don't want to be an executive. I don't want to be a leader. It's like, yeah, but even at that level, you need to be doing different things. You need to be taking over new teams. You need to have that change and challenge. Otherwise, you do start to backslide and you kind of lose your competitive edge.
You do. And I am somebody who is a continuous learner, and I always believe that it doesn't matter what level you're at. So during COVID, I'm, spending this time trying to keep employees safe, customers safe, merge a company, and I'm taking Spanish because I realized that I had a whole group of, employees who were, bilingual that spoke Spanish, and I wanted to try to figure that out. Like, it doesn't matter where you are, but if you're not continuous learning or taking on a new challenge, it's not always about progression to the next level, but it's challenging yourself to learn and to grow. And I don't know about, for me, I find I have a lot of executives who are my peers who say, well, why are you taking that course, Tracy? Or why are you doing this? Because you have to stay relevant and you want to actually stay ahead. So it doesn't always have to be a new promotion. But like if you're really comfortable and you really don't want to go anywhere, it doesn't mean that you don't do anything, because you will move backwards and you will become unrelevant. Even if you're a top performer, you won't be looked at for other opportunities and you'll get bored, and boredom, it kind of kills everything.
Yeah. I 1000% agree with you. And, you were one of the youngest executives, probably the only woman on your board early on. I can empathize with that situation. I found myself in a similar spot. What was kind of that moment that you either realized like maybe the rules were different for you or you were going to have to work like a little bit harder? You talk about the glass ceiling. Like, what was that kind of epiphany like for you?
It was interesting because it was when I was in retailing and I got to an executive level really young. And not only was I the only female that they had as an executive, but I was the youngest. And I had to go through almost this period of acceptance that I didn't see anybody else have to go through. So it started, Kendall, believe it or not, that I'd be invited to the executive committee lunches, but not the pre-meeting and not the after meeting. And then once I got, accepted that I could be at their lunch, then I got invited to come to the pre-meeting. And then, like 6 months later, I got invited to stay for the whole meeting. And I was like, what is this? There's something different. I don't see. And, I asked some of the other executives, hey, did you go through? Oh, no, this has been, but there was this acceptance period that was so different. And I thought, okay, this was the first time I really saw, and I said, I'm being treated differently and I have to work even harder to be part of and to be accepted. And, I really try not to get too big on this, like, women have it harder scenario. But there are circumstances where others, and it may not just be, female, male, but where acceptance is not the same across the board. And that is something that I'm just me, and I do the job that I do. And if I've earned the right for the position, then I've earned the right to have a spot at the table.
Yeah. I have so much empathy for your situation. I feel it often. I've spent a lot of my career in either tech or in financial services, both of which are male dominated. And I, like you, don't want to use it as an excuse, right? And I think that there's a shift happening right now where there's a lot of people like there were plenty of situations in my career where being a woman was an advantage because they didn't expect a lot out of me or they didn't expect me to be great. And then when I was, they're like, oh, check that out. Whereas Johnny, they expected a lot from, and then he had to live up to it constantly, right? So I think there's both sides, but I sat in a similar situation early on in my career. I supported a CFO, and I used to present this big finance report to all of the executive leaders across finance and departments, which was all men except for one woman. And we had a changing of the guard. A new head of finance came in. And the first time I presented to him, he said, I look like I should be dancing on the table instead of sitting at it.
Wow. Wow.
And you're like, I have
Yeah.
no idea what to say to that. So you just keep going. And I just kept
Yes.
presenting and I just moved forward and I just continued with what I was doing and acted like I didn't hear him. And, I will say that particular company, by the time I even made it back to my desk, the head of HR was sitting there like, okay, would you like to file a formal complaint? How would you like to handle this? Right. And they were really supportive, but it was one of those situations where it didn't matter that my technical acumen was strong. It didn't matter that I had the answers to the questions. It mattered that I was the youngest woman sitting in the room. And so I think it's unrealistic to expect that that's not happening. And I love your approach of, hey, if I've made it to this point, then I earned the right to sit here and I earned the right to have my say. And I've proven to you already that I have the clout and the capability to hold this space. And I think having that approach can do a lot of people a lot of good across lots of different groups in how they show up with their leadership team.
I so agree. And on the converse side, I've worked in, tech and telco like you have. And I remember we had a vendor coming in one day and I sort of knew her, a bit more than the rest of the group that she was coming in. And she turned to me and she said, hey, should I, how does this look? And I'm like, what do you mean look? And she was talking about her outfit and she's like, do you think I should hike my skirt up a little bit more or put, move my blouse around? And I was like, no, and at the same, I was mortified because I was like, no. And in fact, like pull your skirt down and button up, like that, even that thought process that people would think that in the business world, it's been so far from what I think of. And like, I want to be accepted for who I am, my capabilities, and what I've accomplished, and the fact that I'm a compassionate leader. I That is what I go for, right? But there is this mindset that people have, some women have, that they have to show differently to get that attention. And it's never been anything that I've done. I mean, I had a similar situation where I was in a room. It was with Samsung. There was 18 men and one woman, which was me. And I walked in and I sat, and I always try to, whoever's the main speaker, I always try to get eye contact with them. So I want to sit where I can at least see them, like across from them in some capacity. I don't want to sit where it's like really hard to see. And I did. And I remember feeling in that room that like, I took over my piece of the table, and I made sure I was engaged, and I made sure that I didn't speak when, and that's another thing some women do, is they just feel like they have to be heard. I don't ever think about that. I just think about inputting where it makes sense and where I add value, right? But I think sometimes you can overthink it too, like that woman did, or like that situation. It's just about being you and just bringing your talent, your personal talent to the table.
So if you're listening to this and you're not watching online, my eyes about popped out of my head when Tracy said that about that vendor. I've seen it happen. I've been there, but it still always shocks me. Because I always feel like I fall on the opposite where I think I'm dressed really conservatively and somebody will make a comment about my outfit and I'm like, seriously, I'm not even showing skin. Like I need you guys to pace yourselves, okay? Um, but I do think you touched on two really, really wonderful things right there, Tracy, that I just want to make sure the audience heard and hones in on, which is one, something that you do at the start of every meeting is you position yourself where you can easily make eye contact with the speaker and you do so, right? So
Absolutely.
often when we're lacking confidence or we're feeling imposter syndrome or we feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be in this room. I'm the only woman or I'm the only director or I'm the only person of my minority group or I'm the only X, we tend to hide, right? We look at our notes, we don't make eye contact, we kind of can even like curve our shoulders over. And I love that idea of I walk in and I make eye contact with the speaker. And maybe it's not so formal as introducing myself and shaking their hand if I already know them. Maybe it's not so formal as like speaking up right at the beginning, but it's that, hey, I'm here. I see you. We've both acknowledged each other now. And then being present in the moment. I think that's so powerful and understated, right? To just be confident enough to be like,
It
hey,
it so is. And the other thing too, that I do is, as a woman, sometimes we would go to school and we'd hold books in front of us, right? And if you watch men, they hold everything down to the side and they're super
mm,
open. So the other thing I've been cognizant of is, we shouldn't be hiding, right? Again, I always go back to I earned the right. I have the title. I was invited to the meeting. They want my opinion. Like they want my opinion. They need me there. I didn't get invited because I was on a CC of the meeting invite. I was a member of it. Then that means I'm important. So get in there and show up strong. And I just, the little things that can, to your point, like the shoulders in or maybe sitting way back away from the table and not up into the table, those things are really important and they make a difference, and you may not even know you're doing it. So I do coach to that, because I think it's so important that people show strong, and it makes you more confident.
yeah, absolutely. And, the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really key is you don't have to overspeak to have leadership presence. I feel like for me, this is my biggest, I'll call it internet coach pet peeve. You have to speak up more. You have to talk more. You have to, you're not talking enough. And that's why people don't see you. And don't get me wrong, every once in a while, I have a client who comes to me who's like, I'm terrified to speak up in meetings. Like, great, let's build that confidence. Let's build that skill. But I don't think that the best leaders I've worked with talked the most. I think they asked the best questions. I think that they were involved the best way. I think they showed support and active participation. And I love that you pointed that out of like, don't overthink it. Don't be like, oh, I have to talk every 15 and a half seconds or they won't remember that I'm here and I don't have to overdo it. And there could be a meeting where not talking makes you the most present person in that room because you were listening and you had eye contact. So I think that that's so great and something that I don't think gets talked about enough.
Well, and it's hard on Zoom, right? Because when you're in a room, you can kind of read it a little bit better and you kind of know. But on Zoom, sometimes you may feel like, ooh, they're not, you're not participating. And that's why, multitasking, I try so hard not to multitask on meetings. I try to be present. You can still have the same eye contact via Zoom as you do when you're in a room. And again, to your point, like it's not about being heard. It's about being present and adding the value. And so many times, you get on a meeting and you're like, oh, it's another meeting. But I literally have to remind myself, like, there's a reason I'm on this call. I've earned the right to be here, and they have the right to, like, I need to add value as they need, like, this meeting needs to be a good meeting. We need to get something out of it together. And so it is important. And it's not about just speaking up. Like your voice is a piece. It's not the only thing that people notice about you.
Yes. Yes, she nailed it. Snaps for Tracy. No, because it's, I think that, I'm going to talk specifically about women since that's where I have most of my personal experience, but apply this to whatever group makes the most sense for you, whether you're more junior, you're a different minority group. I think we're almost coached in the workplace. Like you need to be more assertive. You need to stand up for yourself. And there's a time and a place for that, right? You touched on it. I'm going to walk into the room and I'm going to claim my space. I'm going to make that eye contact. I'm going to be present. Or if you're putting me on this board, on this leadership team, I expect to be included in all of these meetings where the leadership team is meeting, right? There is a space for that, but there's also a space to just listen and digest and be present and be a support system. And I love this balance. And I think, you talk about balancing that compassion with that authority, like that strength and that compassion. I think this is an excellent example of that for anybody who's listening, because we usually swing too far one way or the other.
We do.
Right.
We
And early
do.
on in my career, I was so assertive and so direct and so not the right communicator type. And that caused me a lot of issues early in my career. And I've seen people swing the other way and say, well, I'm going to hide myself behind my books. I'm not going to make eye contact. And I think that there is this middle balance that really makes people so much more effective. And you've led through some pretty challenging situations, right? 9/11, COVID, two of arguably like the most dramatic, attention focused American instances in the last 25 years. What advice do you have for somebody who's leading through that? Because that not only requires strength and compassion and tactical things we're talking about, like meetings, but how do you lead a team through that type of catastrophe and situation?
Yeah, Kendall, it's a great question. And I was like you, I felt like a leader has to be tough and they have to be this. And it took me a while and probably too long in my career to realize that I didn't have to be this, ideal leader, and that you can get results and be compassionate at the same time. And I had a doctor once tell me was having some, stress issues like we all do. And he said to me one time, Tracy, you're too nice to be in corporate America. Like, I don't know how, like, you should be a nurse, you should be a school teacher. Like, I don't know if you have it in you to be this, big corporate executive. And a light bulb went out, and I, for years I was trying to be this corporate executive. And I realized that, like, compassion, and I can be that caring, but I can also be that leader and I can bring it together. And that's when I think it really helped explode my career, when I started to just be me and not be this vision of what I thought a corporate leader needed to be, or this so caring person that I couldn't get results, right? Like I could pull it together. And it really is the reason that I think through crisis, I have been able to lead well and help people through high transition and change, whether it be 9/11 or COVID or the largest merger in telecommunications history. The thing that really came down to is listening, right? It's like I always held these meetings, and whenever we're going through crisis, where I just open a bridge and I may have the first 10 to 15 minutes where I give an update on anything that I can tell them. Always tell people, like, I'm going to tell you it straight. You ask me the questions, I will answer it. If I can't answer it because it's a legal question or something I'm not allowed to speak on, or I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know, but I'll go get it. But let's just have an open dialogue where we can have this conversation, because when you're going through major crisis, most leaders are like, run, 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 just do, here's how we're doing it. And they don't take time to listen to the employees that you're helping through this process. And I remember one situation where we were going through, it was early, we were going through a second merger. We went from Bell-Atlantic Mobile, Frontier, Bell-Atlantic Mobile, and Verizon within 6 months. It was a smaller team, about 600. And there was a woman whose healthcare got messed up, and she was pregnant, and she was so worried about what was going to happen if she had to deliver and the healthcare didn't work. So I said, listen, you call me if by chance you have any troubles when you go to the hospital. And just me reassuring her that I was going to figure it out with her versus her like, it helped her be able to get through it. And like, those are simple things, like just having that communication. But when you're in crisis, the first thing is, oh my God, I got to do my best. You don't have all the best information. So sometimes you want to hide from the employees because, like, oh my gosh, what if they ask me a question and I don't know, right? Is that going to show me as a weak leader or that we don't know everything? I find that question. So communication, and it's not one way to them. It's really more them to us, to you, and understanding is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you touched on something that I think is really powerful, which is it's the human decency piece.
Yeah.
I think we overshadow it in an effort to be the boss, in an effort to be the leader, in an effort to be the XYZ, right? And we stop caring about the team. And I'll give an example. A company that I worked for did layoffs, and my whole team knew layoffs were coming just as a result of their function. We were already involved. I already knew my team was safe. They'd already been communicated to. And the layoff communication goes out, and I schedule let's meet in 15 minutes meeting with my team. How does everybody feel? Now, we already knew. My whole team has already discussed this. Everybody knew this was coming down the pipeline. Everybody knew this was going to happen. And we hop on this call, and one of my team members was like, I don't understand why, though. And I was like, cool, let's have that chat.
Yeah.
I can tell you the Kendall version of why I think this is happening, and I can tell you the script approved legal version of why I think this is happening. And we should have this open dialogue. We should discuss it. And it was one of those situations where, like, my boss didn't even have a team meeting because he's like, well, we already knew about this. This was already like fully explained. Nobody was surprised. And yet people were still having struggles, right? And we set that aside sometimes because that's not what we think the boss. You keep saying the big boss, and I love that imagery because it's like the person in the power suit in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walks in the room and is like, why wasn't this done correctly? Like, that's the boss we have in our
Exactly.
head. And bringing that compassion, that people side is so important. And, I've managed a lot of teams over my career as well. And I had an employee say this once, and I always thought it was so funny because you are the best boss as long as you do your job. Like, you care about us, you will advocate for us, you will get us promoted, you will do what you need to do, you're open and honest in your communication. As long as we do your job, you're great. And if you don't want to do your job, you are the worst boss ever because you take no shiz. Like, you're not going to let some lazy person keep working for you and not do their job and get away with it. And I was like, cool, if that's my reputation, we're killing it. Like, I want to be the best boss as long as you do your job. Now, if you don't do your job, I don't want the rest of my team who is doing their job looking at you and going, well, how come Steve gets to stay on the team? He doesn't work hard like the rest of us. He's not a good employee like the rest of us, right? And so having that balance. So I'd love to get your take on that as we talk about bringing this human compassion in. How do you handle it as a leader when there are people who your human compassion works, your leadership works, your strategy works, and they lean into that and they appreciate it? Versus those employees that you're like, I'm trying so hard to get you to do your job well. And the performance management aspect, I'd love to hear how you lead through those types of challenges, because I know it kind of is like a different flexed muscle.
I had to get over understanding that everybody's led one way. And that's another big thing that most leaders think you manage everybody the same way. And I have learned there is different styles, and as much as they need to learn how to manage me, as I always say, I need to learn how to manage them. For an example, I had one employee who wasn't performing as well as I wanted, and they were sort of, to your point, letting the rest of the team down. But I was having my one-on-ones with him. I was doing, making sure that the follow-ups were done, all those things, but it wasn't working. And I met with him and I just said, something's off. I believe in you. I believe you can do more, but you're not delivering. And he's like, hey, do you think you could just meet with me twice a week for, 15 minutes just to check in? Because I kind of need that extra check in with you. And I was like, okay. And I learned that with him that it's different, right? Now, that's how I kind of manage. Like, I need everybody's a little different. So it's like figuring out your team, what's going to get the best out of them. Also, I am really very open and blunt about performance, because my take is that there, like, I've had somebody in my past who had an issue and everybody knew about the issue except for him. And it was that when he got frustrated, he got very loud and shut other people down. And he never knew that, but everybody else knew that, right? And so I'll be the leader that will say, hey, do you know you do this? And because ultimately I look at my success based on my team's success, and I get the most joy not when I get a great performance review, but when I see my team rising, when I see my team getting promoted. And I don't have a lot of tolerance for non-performance, but it really comes down to, are you leading them correctly? Maybe, maybe not. Are they the right fit, or they have the right skill set? If not, help them get there, or they're in the wrong job, and or they're the 1% that comes to work every day that doesn't want to be successful. Because I truly do believe that people don't want to spend 40 hours plus doing something that they're unhappy at. I do think there's one or two that probably are out there like that, but for the most people, I don't think people want to come to work to do a bad job. So it's really helping them find it. I've let people go who, as hard as it was, because I look at it as, I'm to help them be successful. So when something doesn't work, it's kind of, I can't just put it all on the person, right? And so, but they've come back afterwards and said, Trace, thank you so much for freeing me from something I was miserable doing. Or, Trace, thanks for being so honest, because now I've learned and I've been able to do X better. So it is hard. It's probably one of the skills I think leaders do the least. Nobody likes to give hard, you know, non so positive feedback, but it's important. And we're all learning. Like, I want feedback because I know I'm not perfect, right? Like, I've been told, hey, you forgot to mention XYZ on, as you were calling things out. Yep. Okay. I need to do a better job at that. We all have our opportunities. Nobody's perfect. But if you're just helping people do their best, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a firm believer in everybody learns differently. Everybody gets coached differently. Everybody gets led differently, right? You have to have a customized approach to your people. But that last piece that you touched on, but you also need honest feedback. This is where I see so many leaders fail. Well, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to tell them. So what they do is they just wait them out. Maybe they'll
Totally.
quit if I just ice him out and I stop inviting him to meetings, I stop giving him projects, and I'll just wait. And I'm like, that is so detrimental to the employee who thinks they're doing a good job, because nobody thinks they're doing a bad job. To your point, if they thought they were doing a bad job, they'd do something different, right? Everybody thinks they're great. That's the problem with people. I've had situations where I've had to sit somebody down and be like, hey, I know, to your point, I know you're capable of this. I know you can do it, but you're not doing it. And that's where we have a struggle. You have an opportunity for improvement here, and here's how we're going to get you there. And I think I'm going to quick aside, I think performance improvement plans get a bad reputation for this reason, that managers don't employ them till they've already given up on somebody.
Yes.
And so then they're seen as like a mark, you're going to get fired. But I think, like, I do a lot of informal performance improvement plans with my team. Like, hey, you need to get better at this skill. Here's how we're going to measure it. Here's what we're going to do. And here's how you're going to improve there. And I feel like a lot of bosses are afraid of those conversations. They don't want to be the bad guy. They don't want to say the wrong thing. And they like do this weird sidestep dance. Now, I have definitely let people go who were the wrong fit. I had one guy, I always tell the story because I think it's so funny. I think he was already working another job. So like he no-showed to work for like a week. He wasn't doing his job. We found all kinds of errors. And when I let him go, he goes, "Oh, thank God. I wondered how long it would take." And I was like, "What? What?" He was just waiting me out. He's like, "How long will it take Kendall to decide that this work is like bad enough that I get fired?" And it was so funny because the rest of my team was like, "Thank God. I thought we were never getting rid of this guy." And it is true that like it was a wrong fit. Wasn't the right role for the right person. Coaching was customized, the feedback was honest, they were given opportunities and they decided they didn't want them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's
Right.
okay to release somebody from something that's not the right fit. So much amazing advice already that you've shared today, Tracy. If somebody is listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to progress my career, I want to move into leadership, I want to be this compassionate but strong leader, what's something tactical that you would tell them to do that's going to help them kind of move in that direction?
So I would say, first of all, you need to own your own career. No one is going to own it for you. Even when your leader puts together a development plan and says you're going to do this, like that's not enough. As we go into the new year, vision boarding. I still do a vision board that, of what I want. Like here's, and it's very specific. I'm going to, take one class in 2026. I'm going to reach out and build a network, and connect with 10 people I don't know, but I admire. And it's just like, build your career for you and give yourself personal goals. Don't make too many because you want to feel good about what you achieve. But continuous learning, continuous building your network are things everybody can do. And that alone will help you progress in your career.
So good. I love that. So, Tracy, if people are listening to this and they absolutely love you as much as I loved this conversation, where can they find out more information and connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. Please go out to my LinkedIn page. It's Tracy E. Nolan at LinkedIn. I post almost every week. I'm trying to give little lessons or stories about things that have happened that are, leadership lessons. So please do that. And then I also have my own web page, which is at tracynolan.com. So come see me. We would appreciate it.
We'll put both of those in the show notes so that anybody listening can go in and check them out after today's conversation. But if you like today's episode and you want more fabulous guests like Tracy, make sure you leave us 5 stars. If you have any questions or comments for either of us, put them below so that we can get back to you. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And thank you, Tracy, for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Kendall. It was awesome.